So welcome everybody. My name is Rebecca Ryan. You are in week 2 of a 4-part series about managing the messy middle. What in the heck are we talking about here? Well, quick recap from last week. Here's my art project. Here's my art project. And we talked about how sometimes our vision is very narrow and we can only see one thing at a time. Sometimes as we get wiser, older, our vision widens and we can see even more. But what we're trying to do here is recognize that we're in a moment where some systems are expiring. They're on their downward curve. Other systems are growing. They're on their upward curve. And we are in this in-between place that we call the messy middle. And this is based on the three horizons model that has been used excessively in the United Kingdom and in Europe, but hasn't gotten a lot of traction here in the United States in the futures community. In fact, McKinsey several years ago talked about the 3 horizons of innovation. And when you Google in the US 3 horizons, you'll often see the 3 horizons of innovation, which is different than what we're talking about here. It's not lost on me that when we talk about how to let go what is dying and how to help emerge what is trying to emerge, we go through this chasm. And Yaz, would you please make me co-host? I just want to share one of my favorite images that I think really gets at this. So, oops, not a poll. I want to share my screen really quickly. I used to have this photograph on my office at my desk. So here we have horizon 1, 2, 3, my terrible drawing in photographic form. So horizon 1, what's failing, what's expiring, horizon 3, what's emerging, and then we're in this messy middle. But check this out. Look at the leap, right? We're taking literally, like you can see how that man's body just lines up with horizon 3, and that woman is falling forward from horizon 1 right at the apex of horizon 3. And that's what this moment feels like. You know, we recognize that we don't want to go back to what was. And we also recognize that what can be born, what can come alive, isn't all baked yet. Some of the ingredients are still even on the table. So how do we make this leap, right? From horizon 1 to horizon 3? Well, it's going to be no surprise to you that some of it is about ideas, but a lot of it is about people. A lot of it is about people. So to be successful today, I'm going to be using some shorthand, and I wanted to just quickly share with you some of the glossary. So when I talk about H1, I'm talking about horizon 1, the system that's declining. And for those of you who are like, wait just a minute, Rebecca, I actually didn't see last week's. No worries, Grasshopper. We have the recording up. We're going to be doing some blogs about it as well, because we really see the 3 horizons model as being the work of 2021. Right? Being the work of inventing these brighter futures. So you'll hear more and more from us in the coming weeks about this. But H1 is horizon 1, what's declining. H3 is horizon 3, right? And we just call H2 the messy middle, right? This feels like the turbulent river that is sometimes a little muddy. Rapids are hidden. It can be a little dangerous. Get your safety helmet on. It's the turbulent river between H1 and H3. So we'll call it the messy middle. HPT for today is high performing teams. It may be something else if you're a woman of a certain age. And I think that's it for the glossary of terms. So today we're going to be talking about teams. We're going to be talking about teams. And in just a minute, we're going to do a short interview with a partner. Don't worry, it's just one-on-one. And the goal is to actually hear from your partner, and your partner's goal is to hear from you. So I'm always protective of my introverts. But in my newsletter yesterday, I talked a bit about the power of teams, and that in every team that you're on, you play a different role. You know, I think about growing up in a family. My role changed over time. I went from the youngest kid, right, to I had a brother with a learning disability. So by the time I was, in about the 8th grade, I was like his big sister, right? And then you grow up and you go through all the aging process and you start to parent your own parents, right? So even within systems, our roles change over time. And when I think about the best teams I've ever been on, there have been a few components that have made them clearly the best teams. And starting with me, I understood what my role was. And so in my high school basketball career, I had a different role as a starter, as a team co-captain. Then when I went to play in Europe professionally, I was not a starter. I was basically like the team mascot. And it stung a little bit not to be a starter, but there was still an important role for me to play in that team. And so some of what the invitation is here is to recognize that your best team experience may not have been the team that you led. We have a lot of leaders on this call. We have a lot of leaders in our audience, but very often you can play a really important role on a team that you're not a leader of. So what we're going to do shortly is we're going to do a short interview. Let me just pull up I'll show you the interview questions here. And I'll also add the questions to the chat. Those will follow you everywhere. But with a partner, one partner, you're going to each take 10 minutes to share the responses to 3 questions. What was the best team you were ever on? Right? What was the team's purpose? Was it a sports team? Was it a work team? Was it a family? You know, some families are teams. I've seen it. I wasn't on one myself, but I've seen it happen. You know, these families that do these incredible things. And what made that team the best experience? What made it the best experience? So those are the questions that you're going to take 10 minutes interviewing each other. And if you get put in an interview pair with, if you're an introvert and you get put in an interview pair with an extrovert, I'm going to encourage the extroverts to start, okay? Because these introverts need time to think things through. But please stay on time, because it's also not okay for extroverts to just hog up all the airspace. So here are the instructions. I'll put these in the chat. Right, so you'll have 20 minutes total. We'll give you a notice when there are 10 minutes left. Yaz is going to send you into rooms with one other person, and if we have any extras, we'll collect them in the main room. Yaz, take it away.
Coming right now. I'm trying to avoid single person rooms. Just a moment. All right, here we go. Let's see. All rooms.
Oh man, we've got 4 people left whom I know. Oh, 3.
We have one person in a room by himself.
Oh, bring him back.
Oh, okay, hold
Oh,
on.
poor guy. Or
Main
Lynn,
session.
Lynn hasn't
Okay.
joined up yet, nor has Ken. They might be on other calls. I don't know what their status is, but
All right.
let's bring him back, whomever
I
he
am
is.
bringing
Awesome.
Mike Gardner. I hope he.
Oh, Mike, he was on a little early today.
He was. There he is. Okay.
Hi, Mike. Mike, will you be my partner for this exercise? I really want to, I'm interested in being in one of these. What? Wait. Oh, sorry. Wait. Yes. What?
I just found another person. I'm sorry. There's an Angie who's also by him or herself.
Mike, we're going to deploy you to spend time with Angie.
Okay. Sorry.
Make us proud.
I'll catch up with you later.
All right. We'll look forward to it.
18. Okay, here we go. Move you. 18.
Our 10 minutes will be up.
Did you get the prompt to go to the new room, Mike?
No.
Oh.
My breakout person disappeared.
Was it Sherry Ann Kelly?
No.
I just showed up. I'm late to the game. I'm sorry.
No problem at all. We're doing interviews right now. And why don't we do this? Melissa and Sherry Ann and Ken, I don't know if Ken's here. Mike's being deployed. Oh my goodness. Yes, now Jean is here. What we're talking about is, let me add it to the chat and then you guys will be able to see it. We're just doing a quick interview on the best team you've ever been a part of and what made it a best experience. So of this group that's here, with the exception of Yaz, and Mike, you stay in this group too, because we don't want you to lose all your time. Who's an extrovert in this group? Melissa? All right, Melissa and okay, we're gonna come Melissa, Mike, Sherry Ann. Aaron, you're on hold. Melissa, best team you've ever been a part of and what made it so awesome?
Oh, I get to stay in this room. Okay.
Yeah.
I was waiting to get kicked back out, and I was fine with that. So I've actually been working in public health for almost 20 years. Started like in May, it'll be 20 years. I would say probably where I currently am is the best team that I've been a part of, mostly because over the last couple of years, we've really paid attention to what it is to be part of a team. So even without, on a cultural level within the whole public health organization, within our smaller unit, which is ebbed from 6 health educator, prevention specialist type of positions to, I think we've had as much as 10. I would say that that's probably the best team, because we have honest communication, because we have similar mindsets, but we also come at it like we're all working towards public health. We have the same goal. But I think that what makes it unique is that everybody recognizes on our little secure unit, everybody has their own strengths. So I think that we utilize each other's strengths so well. Like me being the extrovert, my boss is always like, she's my raging extrovert. I'm like, okay, I'll take it.
Okay, I'm going to ask your raging extrovert just in the interest of time, because I want to make sure everybody else gets a chance. This is super useful insight. Mike, let's come to you and then Sherry Ann. Mike, best team. What made it so?
Well, the best team I was ever on was with, at that time I was working at a private environmental college, and I put teams of students together. And they always were very intuitive about what we needed to accomplish. They got what we needed to do to meet our goals, and the synergy was something I have, that I haven't experienced quite the same in the economic development world I'm currently in.
Yeah, awesome. Sherry Ann, best team and why?
Yeah, so I'm an ambivert, so I fall into that between the extroverts and the introverts. The team I have right now is definitely the best team that I've ever worked with. And it's phenomenal to be able to say that. They're not afraid to dream big. They're real innovators, and they like to think way outside the box. When I say big, hairy, audacious goal, everybody shows up at the table with a list, and I love that. But we also aren't afraid to admit that we're not doing things perfectly. We can say, hey, we can improve here, we can change and pivot. And I think not every team has that dynamic. And I think the last piece is that they really care. They believe in the mission, they believe in the purpose. We're all sort of aligned on that. And we know that we're working on something bigger than just, the punch list that we have at work. There's this bigger mission behind it. My fault is I don't think we're as fun as some of the most fun teams that I've worked on. And that's my fault that I'm not doing a better job of bringing that to the table.
We try to not use the F word, fault, in our webinar series, but I'm taking you for where you're at. Sure, you lucky son of a gun. You better not tell anybody who's on your team. Everyone's going to be trying to steal these innovation brains. Aaron, let's come to you. What about you? Best team and why?
So mine is actually a sports team, and it was not related to anything that I did in school. I did not play on a sports team until after I graduated college, and I played on a co-ed church league softball team. And in the South, that is serious. So, the county that we played in pretty much all of the females grew up playing softball there. So they were super, super good and competitive. We were not super good or competitive. So that's what really made it a lot of fun. Everybody was there to have a good time, get a little bit of exercise. We, pulled people in from the stands if we didn't have enough people for our team to play when we got there. It was really just sort of a, bad news bears kind of team. And we played for 5 years. And one year we even won the entire season. So it was a lot of fun. And after 5 years, I realized that my knees could not take a crouching position. And that I was maybe not meant to play competitive co-ed softball. So, but it was great. It was a lot of fun.
What I love about that is like, it was a great team, but you didn't measure your success in the way that sports teams might normally
No.
do that. Rebecca Johns joined us, and I'm going to take it like this. Like, if your video camera is on, I'm going to assume like you're in the conversation, and no shade to any of you whose video cameras just can't be on. But as the main room collects people who get dropped out or bumped off from other rooms, this is like the place where y'all are welcome. So Rebecca, the question we're talking about is best team you were ever on and why it was a best team. Do you have go ahead.
Oh, I get to talk. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
yeah,
you're the last one besides me.
Oh, okay. I was a special ed teacher for 25 years. And the best team I was ever on was a team of special ed specialists. And what made it so great was everybody was so curious and fascinated by what we were up to. And we knew that none of us was as smart as all of us. And because I was the classroom teacher and they were the specialists, they would pull kids out of my room. And then we created an agreement that whatever magic they were doing, they needed to do it in my room. So, because I was with them for 6 hours a day. And I wanted to learn speech therapy, physical therapy, occupational therapy. I needed to know all that stuff because I had them all day. And so they came into my classroom and did their magic. And it was the most fun I've ever had in my life.
That is awesome. So I want to come at this question in a slightly different way, because one of the things that, today's topic about building great teams for the messy middle is in service to realizing that we are in a moment where the things that had served us for a long time are not the model of the future. And I think you all can sort of have a sense of like, yeah, that is true. So there's something about teams, like Rebecca was just talking about, Sherry Ann has talked about, and Melissa, it sounds like in your experience, this has also been true when you're trying to go through something challenging. Public health has gone through something challenging. Any public health official who is still working, I am astonished by. Beating all the odds, Melissa, beating all the odds. So when you think about ingredients for success, team success during innovation, one ingredient. What is one ingredient that makes the team successful? One ingredient. Who'd like to start?
I'll start.
Yeah, go ahead.
Listening.
Yep. There's research behind that the most successful teams, people listen and talk in equal measure. Yeah. So ball hogs, the inference is ball hogs make terrible teammates. People who have to talk all the time. Yeah. Who wants to go next?
I'd say respect.
Yeah. So Mike, in that example that you gave us around the students in your environmental studies group, did they just automatically have that because they all thought that they were peers? Or maybe you're thinking of another team. Can you tell us a little bit more about respect?
Well, I think what worked there was I didn't recruit the so-called brightest and the best. We called ourselves the best of the rest, and we knew our place. And they were very adaptive because of that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. It's like you kind of gave them, we're going to talk about this too, some psychological safety. Like, we're not trying to be the best. You know, okay, good stuff. Sherry Ann, what about you? One ingredient. Okay, Aaron, we'll come to you after Sherry Ann. One ingredient, my
I mean,
favorite
I like that you
introvert?
said psychological safety, and I feel like that plays a big factor in it. But the passion behind what you're doing, having this bigger purpose, seems to me to be one of those things that really brings everyone together, or at least it's the engine that drives you a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure, we know it gets people's discretionary energy. You know, like if they feel really passionate, they're going to work harder on that piece with their discretionary energy. Aaron, what about you? One characteristic of that innovative team?
I'm going to say unique. And I know that's maybe not a characteristic, but something Mike said just kind of made me think about it. If everybody's coming from the same place, could potentially they could have very similar thought. And if you pull in, players, so to speak, from different walks of life, different areas of an organization, from just all sorts of backgrounds, I think it just gives you an opportunity for a more robust product and a more robust process. So yeah, challenge yourself to work with people who have unique ideas, who don't think like you do.
Oh man, you guys should be teaching the course today, honest to God. Melissa, come on back. What about you?
I think it's suspending judgment, because what somebody says, you may hear one thing, but they actually mean another. So it's just really asking the right questions so everybody's on the same page.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, now I want to flip it. I want you to think about the worst team that you've ever been on, the worst. Like you couldn't get me. What it's interesting because those teams are like it's like there's a vampire like energy sucking sound. You go to those meetings and you're tired before you even hit, you head for the coffee pot immediately because you're like, there's not enough coffee to keep me. So let's maybe flip it. And Melissa, let's come to you first. Characteristic of the most terrible team you've ever been on. What was happening there?
Tough one. I'll go with bulldozing. So whether it's verbally or non-verbally, where people are throwing out ideas and you just kind of sit back like this and you just kind of stare. I'd probably say that's the worst.
All right, Aaron, how about you?
I was going to say the always person. They're always talking. They're always right. They're always leading. They're never taking from anyone else. They're always at the front, right, wrong, indifferent. I have seen that characteristic pop up more often than I care to acknowledge.
Oh man. How do those people get promoted? That's what I can't figure out.
They always do, because
That
they're
is-
always.
Oh, they're so extra.
Yes.
Okay. Oh my God. All right, Mike, let's come to you, then Sherry Ann, then Rebecca.
Well, I wouldn't describe it as worse, but some of the most challenging is teams I've been on working here. I live in northern Wisconsin, working with tribal communities. When you have a different worldview.
Yes. Yep. Oh man. I would love to talk with you about this more, but because that's almost a non-starter, isn't it? It's like,
It's challenging for sure.
yeah. Sherry Ann and then Rebecca.
Yeah, mine was like a scene out of Mean Girls. It was a very cliquish group, and if they didn't want to hear new ideas. If you weren't a part of the group, you didn't have any opportunity to play a role in it. Just people wouldn't listen to each other. There wasn't a lot of respect. It was not good. A long time ago, by the way.
Yeah, because in your role now, you could change that. You could blow that click up. But yeah, when you're in the position where you're like, you have no authority, that's tough. Rebecca, coming to you.
A little bit of Mike's and a little bit of Sherry Ann's. I've worked on reservations too, and it was awful when I went with a group of white people. When I went by myself, it was really different. But mine was like Sherry Ann's. It was Mean Girls. It was like women who take other women down.
Mm.
And it's kind of like, I call it the dark side of the feminine. Competitive, backstabby, gossipy, mean. That was, yeah,
Yeah.
that was really bad.
Katie, if you want to jump in here, we've pulled apart some of the best experiences about great teams, and so we were coming at it from the other side is worst characteristics of worst team experiences we've had. Do you want to jump in?
Ooh, well, I would have to say the lack of focus has been the real killer of teams that I've been a part of that were not functional and not healthy. Not clear roles, people that were backbiting. You know, I'm not thinking of a specific team, but I'm thinking of the characteristics of when it didn't work well.
Yeah.
It was just toxic.
Why was a team even together if they didn't have a focus? I mean, what's the point?
Well, they had an alleged purpose, but people had individual agendas.
Got it. So little ego,
Mm-hmm.
little peeing on trees.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Tinkling on the bushes.
Little tinkling on the bushes. Good stuff. All right. So I don't have another question for this group. We have 4 minutes left before we stop all the other groups. Although some people are coming back in. So anybody is welcome to jump in here, but other things you're thinking about when you think about great teams, anatomy of great teams.
I would like to share something because I worked in the nonprofit world a lot, and everybody would cut around the table and there was money. And it would get really competitive really quickly because everybody just wanted that pot of money and they didn't want to share it because they thought if I share, I'll have less. And then I was part of a team that understood that if we share, we get more. And so it was a fundamental shift in understanding. And as soon as there was money involved, it was like either people would separate out or they would come together.
Wow. How did the gauntlet get thrown down about, you guys, we need to realize that collaboration is what we need to do here? Like, how did that happen?
Well, they were two different teams.
Oh, right on. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Makes me wonder if teams can change. If
collaboration's hard. Collaboration's one of the hardest things to teach and one of the hardest things to do. Because it's a lot of letting go.
Which is so much easier than hanging on for dear life.
It's a hard sell.
Melissa, do you have something? I saw you took yourself off mute.
did. I think, from just a interpersonal type of piece, just the whole idea of mindfulness and recognizing, one of my good buddies is always like, you only can do what you can do, nothing more. And just recognizing that. So within the team, like somebody doesn't have to be superhuman, that is hugely responsible or whatever their traits are. Like, you don't have to do everything. And that's the benefit, I think, of the teams when they're well oiled.
Right on. Other thoughts to share around team excellence? Hi, Ken.
Rebecca, one of the teams that I mentioned that was great for me was a musical performance organization that I was part of, and there were people who were much better than others. It was a community-based organization, but everybody had a role, and everybody knew what their role was. We had a clear focus. We were raising money for music education and scholarships in our little tiny school district, and everyone respected everybody else's role, whether you were the stage manager or you were running lights or you were handing out tickets. Everybody had a clear role, and everybody's role was important, and everybody valued everybody else. And hugely diverse group of people that I never would have met otherwise. Guys that were just out of jail, architects, lawyers, the guy that managed produce at the local grocery store, just a wonderful, amazing group of people that had a clear focus and respected one another's contributions.
Katie, how did the tone get set for that? Because that is absolutely a fundamental feature of high-performing teams, but that tone is unusual. It's not a given.
Mm-hmm. Especially with such a diverse group of people. We have a lot of really wonderful artists in our community, who had been recruited to be part of an organization that did a performance, and we all participated in this performance. But the performance, it was a wonderful cultural event, but it wasn't producing any impact. And so several of us that had been in that performance got together and we said, we could do so much more if we did this as a fundraising effort and we gave the money to someone else. And so it was that convening of shared values that made the difference.
I see. So it sounds like there was sort of an organic nature to kind of everybody realizing at the same time, this could be a different way. That's awesome.
Exactly.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
So welcome back, everybody. This was kind of an appreciative interview, like best of what works in great teaming. But also this community is such a blessing. It is just such an amazing community. And for you to have a little bit of time to network with each other, I hope it helps strengthen some of the weak ties that we've been creating for the last 11 months or so. So now that we've talked a little bit about what makes a team great, and we're gonna consolidate, we're gonna recombobulate this learning in just a moment. I'm gonna take you through a 7-question quiz that I want you to answer for yourself. So like with most of our Futures Fridays, if you have something to write with, you're gonna be well served. So this is from an oldie but a goodie in terms of an article from Harvard Business Review, but it is about competing for the future. And again, this entire series from all of February is about how we navigate from the old models that the expiration dates have passed to our new models, right? So as we think about how we compete for the future, this quiz is designed to really help you think about the culture you're in right now. Again, there are no right or wrong answers, and I'm not interested in seeing your results. This is just for you. So this is, again, it's a 7-question survey, the culture that you're in right now. So some of you are in organizations, some of you are in communities, some of you work with tribes, you're all across the board. So you're gonna have to modify the language to what will serve you. But question 1, how does senior management, and this could be you, how does senior management's point of view about the future compare with that of your competitors? So you're gonna give yourself a score from 1 to 5. 1 is, we have a very conventional and reactive view to the future, versus we actually have a distinctive and farsighted view of the future. So give yourself a score between 1 and 5 that best represents those 2 poles. Question 2, which issue absorbs more of senior management's attention? Re-engineering core processes, far left at 1, or re-engineering core strategies at the other end at 5. So, I mean, think about all the meetings that you're attending these days, right? Or your senior managers are holding. What is on the agenda? How to get better at what we already do at a 1, or how to create new things that might create new value. Core strategies at 5. 3rd question. Competitors, you have to, again, if you're in a community or you're the manager of a local government, don't think of your competitor, you don't have competitors, but you do have competitive communities or peer communities that you feel like you're always losing. Like if you're trying to extend a job offer, you're constantly losing candidates to another community. So think of your competitor in a way that makes sense for you. But is your organization, your community seen more as a rule follower or more as a rule maker? A rule follower or a rule maker? One through 5. Okay. 4th question. This is, again, just kind of part 2 of this same benchmark survey. What is it could be your community, it could be your organization, depending on what you represent, but what is your strength? Is it in operational efficiency? We are lean, mean, and amazing. Or is it in innovation and growth? Like, catch us if you can. Fifth question. What is the focus of your advantage building efforts, right? So in the places where you really are trying to create advantage, is it like, oh my God, we have to catch up to where the market is, or to where we're behind the median? Or are you trying to get out in front of the median? And when I say focus, I'm talking about, where does your budget go? Where does your strategy point? Right? Next question. What has set your transformation agenda? Some of you are like, what transformation agenda? Stick with me, right? Is it peer pressure or your competitors who are setting your agenda? Or is it your own internal organizational sense of what the future is, your own foresight about what's coming? 1 through 5 again. And the 7th and final question. Where do you spend the bulk of your time? As a maintenance engineer, preserving the status quo, 1, over to 5, an architect designing the future. Okay, now total this up. 7 questions, a maximum of 5 for each question, so a maximum of 35 possible points, or a low of 7 possible points, right? And think about where you are in that distribution, 1 through 35, or excuse me, 7 through 35, right? So if you're in the high teens and low 20s, then what that indicates is that you're not competing for the future. You're trying to just catch up, stay caught up. You are more of that maintenance engineer of the future, trying to do better, faster, cheaper, what we've been doing for a long time. But if you're in the high 20s, right, mid to high 20s, then you're more out in front, trying to imagine what that horizon 3 is. So this is just a quick pulse of the context that you're going to be building your team in. And if you've got numbers that are in those mid to high 20s into the low 30s, you're going to have an easier time. The team that you're going to build to make the leap from H1 to H3 is going to have an easier time because you're swimming in waters that are friendly towards this. If you're in a culture with lower numbers, standing up the team that's going to help take you from H1 to H3 is going to be more difficult. You're going to get more shit from people about, what are you trying to do? You think you're so special. That's not what we do here. Who do you think you are? And listen, that's just how it's going to be right now. But that doesn't mean you're wrong or you're misguided. Because if we want to make this leap from H1 to H3, we are going to need a team of people to bring us there. So some of you who are on this call would see yourself as being the convener of a team, of one of these high performance teams that can cross the chasm. Others of you might see yourself as being the recruitee, right? So I want to spend just a few minutes talking to my conveners here, real talk around what it means to convene a team to go from H1 to H3. First of all, you have got to give people air cover, or you have to elicit it from the top brass. So we're working right now, Yaz is leading a project in Sugar Land, Texas, where the new city manager has said, I want an innovation team. I want it to not be the usual suspects. And we expect them to make mistakes. We expect them to fail. This team has air cover at the very highest levels. And even with that, it is challenging for them. It is challenging to think, am I really going to fail in front of everybody? Right? So number one, convener, you have to secure air cover. The convener's role is in a way the most difficult. It reminds me of my basketball days, right? Because you know what a great coach does? A great coach, yes, absolutely screams at her or his players. Absolutely. So I'm getting my ass chewed all the time by my coach. But you know who the coach is also screaming at? The referees, right? And as the convener, that's part of your job, is to absolutely get your team up, rocking, and ready to go, but also telling those above you, right? Like hands off, give them time, give them space. If they fail, it's on me, right? So what can we do to give air cover? Second notion here is the idea of psychological safety. And it's beyond air cover. It is creating these conditions so that everyone can say things stupid without being afraid that they're going to be told that they're stupid. You know, Google undertook this massive project to figure out which of their teams were most successful, and nothing that they measured for was a causal factor. So they had to go deep, deep, deep. And that's when they discovered this, that if teams had psychological safety, right, they would be more productive. So as the convener, you have to set the tone. You have to set the tone for psychological safety. And then we want pioneers and pragmatists, not laggards or soreheads. And this is where it gets really tricky. There are people in most organizations who would expect that if there was going to be a new team that was going to be working on innovation or trying new things, because of their role within the organization, they would be selected. And guess what? No, Charlie, no. You are not necessarily going to be selected just because you have a title or you're seen as a leader. You want pioneers and pragmatists, right? So pioneers who are willing to think crazy thoughts, and pragmatists who are like, yeah, but how could we actually put this together? We are not accepting people who don't fit that mold. So Priya Parker has written a great book called The Art of Gathering, and she talks specifically about how important it is to not invite people, because you don't want the wrong people, right? Fourth thing, the notion of whole brain teams. You might think, I mean, if you're thinking about an innovative team, you might think, we want all visionaries. Oh my God, you guys, if you recruit all visionaries, you will go nowhere, because visionaries just want to talk about ideas, right? We use the Phoebe, the Focused Energy Balance Indicator assessment. And there are, in this assessment, energy comes in 4 flavors: visionary, driver. So the visionary people are the ones who have the big ideas. The drivers are the ones who are like going to get things done. The organizers are the ones who are going to make sure that there's a process that we can follow and it's understandable. And then organizers, drivers, visionaries, and collaborators. Collaborators are the ones who are going to bring the fun and bring everybody along. Most of you have 1 or 2 signature patterns there. Most of us don't have all of the patterns. So the whole idea here is that you need some visionary, right? But you also need some driver and some organizer, right? Who can make sure that whatever it is we're doing, you have that whole brain team. And then finally, and Yaz is going to talk about this next week when she talks about picking pilot projects, but there are people who are boundary spanners. And I think the way to think about this is, remember when you were in high school and you had cliques? Like in my high school at West Bend East, there were like the dirt balls who they all smoked, and they would go into, it was called the pit. It was like this area outside that was sheltered. They would all go in the pit and they would smoke during breaks. And then you had the jocks, right? So this was like the football team and primarily male, and you know, you had that group. And then you had the nerds, and they did like yearbook, and they were on debate and maybe math club and AV club. God, I'm really dating myself here, but you get the point, right? These cliques. But then you had people who sort of could move between all of those groups. Like I distinctly remember this kid named Terry King, and he smoked, but he was also like an amazing track athlete, right? And he was crazy good at math. And Terry was a boundary spanner. Like he was a guy who could get, like if there was going to be a revolution, everyone was going to follow Terry King out the door because he was so well connected with all those groups. Now, a boundary spanner would be great to have, but if you can't get a boundary spanner, or if your boundary spanner also happens to be the PR or communications person, huge get to get them on the team. All right. And then final thing, as the convener, this innovation team is probably going to be in addition to everybody else's work. So you have to create like a cadence. Show up, what happens at the meeting, what doesn't happen at the meeting, and make sure that people take commitments from the meeting that are due at the very next meeting. So about 60% of the human population, as far as I can tell, are obligers. These are people who have a hard time keeping commitments to themselves, but an easy time keeping commitments to other people. And you can play into this, right? So conveners can make sure that at the end of every meeting, everybody knows what their assignment is before the next meeting, and then nobody wants to shame themselves by not having their stuff done because everyone else is counting on them. So as the convener, here are a couple of hot tips for you as you're convening your team. Now I want to share 5 things, the science behind high-performing teams, and some of these things are not what you expect. They are not mainstream. They are not in the literature of like what makes a great team. So real quickly, number 1, does your team have self-awareness? When I first read about this science, I was like, what? It didn't make sense to me at first. But especially as I was hearing the stories of the people who were in my group talking about great teams, they have an awareness of why they're on the team, what their role is on the team, if this is the right team. Some people know, I'm thinking of you, Erin, when it's time to get off the team, right? So that level of self-awareness at the team level is really important because not everybody needs to be on every team. So that level of self-awareness, and I'm going to put a great article, two great articles in the chat that get more at the science of high performance teams. You know what the right number is? The best number for a team? It's 2. It's 2. I mean, this goes to biology. We're used to pairing, right? We do this as 2-leggeds. Pairs are everywhere in nature. In the Silicon Valley ecosystem, you're supposed to have the nerd and the hustler, right? That tends to be the most dynamic combination for starting up a company. Now, some of you might be like, oh my God, I could never within my organization just start with a team of 2. Why not? I mean, it makes scheduling a lot easier, but also it removes any excuse you might have about why you need the right configuration, right? So, and this person shouldn't be just like you. They should be someone who has a corollary or a complementary set of skills. Remember, we're going for that whole brain. Then, right, how do we communicate? The 3 E's. Energetically, always reminding people, right? Like what we're doing matters. Like, let's make it a stand-up meeting. It doesn't have to be a sit-down meeting. Let's keep our energy high. Let's keep our conversation at a level where we're continuing to move things along. How are people continuing to engage with the mission of what the team is about doing? And then here's this 3rd E, which the science again surprised me. When your innovation team has a lot of connections outside the organization and certainly outside the team itself, you find that they are far more effective in being innovative. And it makes sense. But often what we do is we choose teams that we're used to working with people. And you know what happens? We start to enter into this echo chamber where you know one another too well. I read research years and years ago that said the 5-year mark is about the magic mark for teams because it takes that long to congeal, to gel as a team. And after that, the gelling is stultifying. So you want to have that right kind of mix of people who have a foot in, but also have a foot out and who can import ideas from elsewhere. Let's talk a little bit about oxy, and I mean oxytocin, not OxyContin. Great teams, high performance teams, they're the kind of meetings no one wants to miss. And why is that? Because there's chemistry. There's that good feeling of oxytocin that gets released. And you know what is the key to releasing that? Is generosity. The science around groups of scientists, for example, who work on breakthroughs is that these scientists wanted to help each other, not compete with each other. So in my small group, Rebecca, you were talking about the generosity factor. Like if we are all working together to create a bigger pool, that's a much different vibe than if we feel like we're in there all trying to compete over things. So use generosity as the guide. Call people out for the good that they're doing, right? make sure that you start on a high note, that you're always being grateful for the time that people are giving to the mission. Generosity costs nothing, but the payoff is so great. And then we already talked about whole brain teams, but this is that idea that you want people who are extroverts and introverts. You want people who are like good matched pairs if you're going for a team of two. And oh, by the way, these characteristics on teams will make them 40% more likely to create successful breakthroughs. This is like the starter recipe for good bread, right? It's like you can outperform any, amateur baker by using this starter recipe for how to grow these teams. So I'm going to stop my share there for right now. And I want to open it up for any questions, clarifications. Oh my God, Hannah, West is best. I don't think I can handle this. Hannah is referring to West Bend East High School, West Bend West and West Bend East. My brother went to West Bend West and they always said West is the best and East is the least. And we always said the sun shines in our neighborhood in the East. Anyway, okay. Yeah. Oh, Gretchen. Oh my God, I'm being bombarded by my high school cabal here. Gretchen went to West as well. Okay, any real questions about building innovative teams to take us from H1 to H3? If you want to raise your hand, which you can do in your reaction panel, we'll do this. Yep, sun rises in the east and sets in the west. Thank you, Gretch, appreciate that. Raise your hands. Or you can just raise your hand if you're on the Zoom screen. Yeah, Mike Gardner, take yourself off mute. Let's hear you, mister.
Well, I was surprised by the right number is 2. Because often we're on teams that are 4 or 5 and there's 2 people doing all the work.
Yep. Yeah, I know. I was very surprised by that as well, but I've been parts of very small teams for most of my career. And it is astonishing what you can get done. I think in a way, it's kind of like, because what you're describing, Mike, is the mean of work falls to 2 people. So everyone else maybe is just attending meetings, or I don't know what they're trying to do. But I guess there are teams that have great productivity with larger numbers, but you don't need to have more than 2, right? Is the point. So
I agree.
Surprising to me too. So Mike and I are going to go team up on something. All right, other questions, comments? Yes, feel free to jump in if you've been seeing something. Ken Giffen, then we'll come to Aaron Hudson.
So just a question about course correcting. So you've got a team, in this case, it's a team of people that are in their extra time here to really get things going. As a convener, you're noticing that things aren't quite working with team. Maybe, you need a recalibration of team members or a recalibration of energy. Just any stories or advice on how you would course correct so that the team doesn't kind of implode with inertia?
There's a punch list of things, Ken, that I would go through before deciding to course correct. And I'm going to tell you what a couple of those things are, but I want to, this group has got so much experience running high performance teams. I'm almost ashamed to be the one talking into the microphone. So any of you who have feedback to Ken, let us know. We want to get your voice in on this as well. So maybe just put in the chat, like, I've got something to address to Ken, and we'll come to you after we talk with Aaron briefly. But Ken, these would be the things I would look at. Number one, is the mission clear? Do people know why we're really meeting and doing what we're doing? Is it clear? And one of the things that's a killer for teams that end up losing their way is when the mission feels endless, right? When it's like, oh Christ, I just joined a committee. I didn't join a team. I joined a committee that there's no end in sight. And that's one of the, Yaz is going to walk you guys through how to pick great pilot projects next week. Strongly recommend that you sign up for that webinar or watch the recording of it if you can't attend. But there's a clarity to pilot projects around how much time this is going to take, the fact that you can leave at any time. You can bring new people in. These are open systems. You can bring new people in if they will add some value. So number one, I'd start with mission. Number two, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? Maybe I don't have an agenda that gets to the meat of the matter first. Maybe you're running a meeting that is actually just 3 people giving book reports and everyone else there is like, why do I have to be here for a book report? Just write it up and send it to me. Meetings should be focused on making decisions, having a smackdown of ideas, trying to build new knowledge together, right? So I would be looking at myself and whether I have an agenda that works. And then the final thing I would think about is, what seems off in this team? I have just had this experience recently with a non-work organization that I'm part of. We changed one person on the team. The entire meeting is amazing. It's gone from like, there's not enough coffee in the world for me to get through this meeting to I cannot wait. I'm meeting with this group like 6 hours a week now. And I would never have done that in the previous configuration. So is there a person who somehow is like a vampire on this team and maybe needs to be asked to step away? Those are the things I would think about. Anybody who's got some additional stuff to share with Ken, go right ahead. Erin, let's come to you. Questions?
So a comment, and then you just said something that maybe I'll offer to Ken as well. So our initial round of questioning, when we were going through kind of aspects or characteristics that we felt like really helped or really hindered a team, and then you're talking through those last few slides, I just found it interesting that there were so many similar trends. So we know what helps to make a good team. So why are we still building, pardon my language, shitty teams? So that's just something for me to keep in my mind as we move forward. But something you said made me think maybe might help Ken. As teams can be organic and work groups can be organic, if you find someone initially was on the team and at some point they just are uninterested, allow them to have the freedom to not be there anymore. If don't force it. One of the examples that I shared with Rebecca and the group was the team that I most enjoyed being a part of in my life was a co-ed softball team way past when I ever should have been playing softball. And I played for like 5 years, not because I was any good, because I'm not any good. I just love to play. And then when I realized it hurts more to stay in a crouched position for an hour than it should, I realized I probably should give this up. So let them stay and play for as long as they want to. And then when they no longer want to, let them go. That's my 2 cents.
That's awesome. Dennis, go ahead. Dennis Chairman.
Hi, Rebecca. I just was curious, this issue of 2 is the right number. I'm also curious about, and I'm potentially just starting an organization design process, and it happens to be 2 people that are the energy behind it, and they're good together, and they're a good complementary set of people. But they're thinking they need to add other people to make whatever they come up with acceptable, and then people can buy into it. So my question, if you have a little answer to it, what would be the best way if it ends up being just 2 people to get buy-in to whatever they develop?
Yeah, this is, I think it's, I wore my black wrist bracelet today because discernment is what's on the, is my reminder to myself. And I think that's the key, Dennis, is discernment. So it sounds like in this team configuration, there are going to be moments where they're going to need buy-in. And that's when they're going to need to have a meeting or a couple of meetings, not necessarily widen the team. Although if the person they're meeting with and they need buy-in from says, I'd actually like to join this team, then say, let's pilot that. Let's try that for a few weeks and make sure that it's a good use of everyone's time. But you want this addition to be almost exponential, right? Because if it's just accretive, it ends up pulling the energy out of the team. And once again, you know, our focus for this series is on these teams that can help us make the big leap, that can make the trapeze leap. And when you're trying to generate that kind of energy, just think of it from a physics perspective. Oh my God, the last thing you want to do while you're trying to jump off a trapeze is to say, hang on to this other person. Good luck getting to the other side, right? So just be discerning about what is actually needed and what is the best interaction to get you to that. Because if it's a meeting and not a new team member, you've saved everybody a lot of time and heartache. Martin Brady asked, does the size of the team depend on what you're trying to accomplish? Ironically, when dealing with legislative dealings, I always found that small campfires are better. Preach, my brother. Yes, a good bottle of wine, a small campfire can go a long, long way. But absolutely, you're right. I mean, for example, the teams that we talked about in Sugarland, right? They have self-selected around a series of things that they want to do to move the dial. Some of these teams have like 4 people on them, some have 6 people on them. But the idea is that you want in that case, you want people's energy for what they're doing to be there. That's the first qualification, is like, are they fired up about what it is we're trying to do? Great. And from my perspective, once you start to get above like 6 or 8, break it into 2 teams, because over that number starts feeling again like a committee, and it prevents the give and take. So there's science that says the perfect amount in a meeting of listening to talking is 50-50. And so what happens, the bigger the meeting gets, the more everyone feels like I had to listen the entire time. I didn't get to share my perspective. So anyway, but Martin, to your point, of course it matters on what it is you're trying to accomplish. But I also want to say teams should never feel like hostage situations. So you always want the ability to be able to leave if you're like not the right fit, and you give the psychological safety for that to be so. Yes, why am I talking? Wait, Anne Lamott has this famous line about a women's sewing circle whose acronym is WAIT. Why am I talking? Absolutely, it's a good question to ask yourself. All right, so that is going to be a wrap for today. I want to close with one final slide. This is just our lovely reminder for all of us. 2021 is not the year of the pivot. We have already pivoted, right? 2020 was the year when we realized so many things that are broken that we do not want to go back to. So we have already turned away from that H1, Horizon 1, right? We are building towards an H3. And I share the ox because number one, oxen don't pivot. 2021 is the year of the ox in the Chinese calendar. And what are oxen great at? Steady forward progress. That's what we want to do, right? That's what we want to start to do. Steady forward progress so that we can start to build the lattice work towards that Horizon 3. Okay. And picking the right people is going to help you get there. So go build your team of oxen. And please join us next week when Yasmin Arkan will be talking about how to pick pilot projects, get this, that require no money and no permission. This is some hot sauce we're going to be serving up next week. All right, you guys, take good care. Look forward to seeing you next week. I'll hang out for a little while if there are others who have questions.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
I had a question that
Daniel.
How are you? Sorry, I was eating, so I had my camera off.
No, not at all. I'm looking at that very colorful poster over your right shoulder. I think